Proto and Magnet Soul are by far my two favorite double souls to use in Battle Arc 5, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Sure, I've always liked Proto Man personally, and I'm drawn to Magnet Soul since I've always been fascinated with electricity, but I actually think that these two being my favorites would have happened anyways. It may be a stretch, but I actually think that Capcom intended for people to use these two souls. I mean, obviously they wanted us to use every soul in the game, otherwise they wouldn't be in the game at all. What I really mean is that I think Capcom intended for us to use Proto and Magnet Souls together. Let's break it down. The first thing to point out here is the nature of sword chips. When you look at their damage numbers, they're generally kind of high. Just take a look at your beginner folder when you start a new game, where the damage of your chips is 40 for cannons or 50 for mini-bombs. Your sword chips, on the other hand, start out at 80 damage. From a design perspective, this makes a lot of sense. Sword chips by their nature are short range, making them much harder to hit. The payoff is that if you do manage to hit enemies with them, they do a lot of damage. Usually, when using sword chips, you need to have other support to help set them up, which generally consists of ways of negating the downside of their short range, usually by stealing opponents' panels. Area Grab and Meta Gel are both great ways to steal panels and make it easier to hit your opponents no matter where they are, but they're not available in every code and can't be used in every folder unless you're lucky enough to have a copy of Area Grab Star. Obviously, Proto Soul negates this need for area grabs by having the inherent ability to improve swords, namely charging sword chips to give them a step sword ability. But Magnet Soul has a way of setting up sword chips as well. Magnet Soul's charge shot, the Mag Bolt, works by pulling enemies towards Mega Man and paralyzing them if it hits. This means you could use Magnet Soul to pull enemies closer to you and then follow up with a sword chip. This of course isn't the only way that these souls work well together. If you look at both of these double souls, you might notice that they're the only ones in this version that share one ability. Both of these double souls can charge chips of their respective elements to make them deal double damage. Of course, Gyro Soul can also do double damage with wind chips, but it requires you to use other wind chips first, rather than working by a chip charge. And Napalm Soul charges fire chips to turn them into a bomb instead of just making them deal double damage. This almost seems like an intentional decision by Capcom to make sure that both Magnet and Proto Souls have high damage potential, especially when taking this last point into consideration. In my first Battle Arc 5 episode of Folder Decoder, I featured a V-code folder that focused on using Magnet Soul, but also had sword chips for Proto Soul as a backup strategy. As it turns out, this is actually a recurring theme amongst Battle Arc 5 chip codes. There are actually several chip codes containing sword chips such as the Blades, Katana, or Moonblade, and Elect element chips such as Volts, Electrial, and Custom Volt. This allows you to easily throw Magnet and Proto Souls together into a folder, almost like this was an intentional decision made by Capcom when developing this game. Codes that contain both multiple sword and elect chips include the A, B, C, E, L, V, and Z codes. Each of these codes contains enough elect and sword chips that you can effectively make a Proto-Magnet hybrid folder with any of these codes. Each code contains either a Katana chip or a Moonblade chip, which can work great with Proto Soul, as well as either Electrial or Volts chips for Magnet Soul. It's also worth noting that the Thunderball chip also comes in Star Code and can be thrown into any of these folders for a Magnet Soul sacrifice. Overall, I think it's actually possible that Capcom intended for players to use Magnet and Proto Souls together in their folders, and I think there's enough evidence to point out this possibility. I've personally been using these two souls together for a long time, and not just in my V-code folder that I featured in Folder Decoder. I know sword chips get a bad reputation sometimes for being weaker due to their short range, but you can avoid that issue by using Magnet and Proto Souls in your chip folders. Let me know in the comments if you think that Capcom intentionally put sword and elect chips together in the same codes, or if you think that Capcom tried throwing swords into as many codes as possible just for the Proto Man fans. Also, please consider giving this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more Mega Man Battle Network content in the future. And as always, thanks for watching.